Hello, Guilty Feminists. Thank you so much for coming along to so many shows. So far, all of our Museum of Comedy Road to Gilead shows have sold out, and our next show on the South Bank with Tracy Emin is also sold out. But you can come to our open space event, which is on the 20th of June. The location has moved. It is now at Town Hall at St Pancras. And if you go to guiltyfeminist.com, you can find a link to that event on the homepage or the live page. This event is an open space model where anyone can come with any ideas that they've got under the Road to Gilead theme. And the Road to Gilead is really about forming a joyful resistance against the far right and creating a better existence. So you can come, you don't have to have any ideas, you can join other people's spaces, you can move from one to another, you can have an idea you're passionate about. It doesn't matter at all. As long as you want to create a kinder, fairer society, you are welcome in that room. It's a full day from 10:30 to 5, and it's £10, which includes lunch. If you cannot afford £10, don't worry, just email us at guiltyfeminist@gmail.com and you will have a space anyway. When you book, if you can afford more than £10, there's an option to pay £20, and that means you will pay for someone else's space who couldn't afford it or who would really appreciate it. We hope as many people can come along as possible. If you can't make it on the day, you, of course, can set up a group wherever you are and you can Zoom in for the beginning and the end so we all feel like one big exciting project, or you can Zoom in and do the whole thing on Zoom, as many people did last time we did it. There's been various projects that have come out of the last one, so we thought we'd do it again, and we hope you can make it to Town Hall on the 20th of June, or Zoom in or form your own group if you can't. On the 18th of July, we'll be at the Isle of Wight at Ventnor Fringe, 6 p.m. It'll be me and Felicity Ward and some exciting Isle of Wight guests. And on the 7th and the 14th of July, we will be at the Soho Theatre doing Edinburgh preview shows. And what that means is we will have a selection of comedians we think fit in well to the Guilty Feminist ethos. And if you can't get to the Edinburgh Fringe, this is your opportunity to come out and have a mini Fringe night. If you can get to the Edinburgh Fringe, this is your opportunity to see some tasters of shows. And you might think, oh, I'm definitely going to go and see that hour-long show. So come along to those if you can. They're always sold out, so get tickets as soon as you can. We ourselves will be in Edinburgh from the 20th to the 23rd of August doing some Road to Gilead shows. 7:30 p.m. at the Gilded Balloon. So come along to those and watch out for more shows. If you would like to hear more about Road to Gilead open space events, other projects we're doing, and know full well when the Guilty Feminist shows are coming up so you can get in early and book, then sign up to our mailing list at guiltyfeminist.com. Also, if you could give our podcast a follow right now, follow or subscribe or whatever it is that you do on your platform, it really helps us build the podcast and the community. So if you can do nothing else, just hit that follow button right now, wherever you're listening to this. And if you could pop over and give us a review and rating for any episode, you can do it every episode if you want. It really helps other people find us, especially if you give us a lovely 5-star review. And now, on with the podcast. Live from Waterstone's Picadilly, the Spontaneity Shop presents the Guilty Feminist Waterstone's Book Club, with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guest, Ashley James, talking about her book, Bimbo. Hello, and welcome to the Guilty Feminist Waterstone's Book Club. So exciting tonight to have an author we're very, very excited about. Our guest today is the author of the new book, Bimbo. She's a feminist campaigner. She's been seen on TV debating the likes of Piers Morgan and Nick Ferrari. She hosts the... I think that was the author herself who just said boo. If you haven't done trigonometry, you haven't lived. Don't recommend it. She hosts the parenting podcast, Mum's the Word. Please put your hands together and make incredible woohooing noises for Ashley James! There's your microphone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone.
Delight to have you here at Waterstones. We love this book club because it's just like this little attic nest where we come up and we talk about books. And it's a real joy. Just give us a cheer if you listen to The Guilty Feminist. Give us a cheer if you don't know what you're at.
Give us a cheer if you're here to see Ashley because you love her from the TV or her podcast. Great. So we've got a lovely
There
mix.
were some woos there. That could have been really awkward.
No, it's a nice mix of people who are going to discover you tonight and people who are going to discover the Guilty Feminist tonight. So that's always a joy when we've got a crossover. Oh, I have been asked to tell you, if there's a fire, leave by the door. And I would imagine don't try a lift. Just there's lots of stairs. There won't be a fire. There won't be a fire. I've put that into your heads now. There's no fire. Don't worry about it. I really, really enjoyed your book. I thought it was great.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from you.
It feels like a really timely book, especially for maybe girls and young women in your lives who are in a very different climate from the one that we were in like 2018, 2019, even 2020. Something, Ashley, has...
You mean the years of hope and progress?
Yes. Remember that time when we were all out on marches for, women's marches and the Me Too movement was happening?
And we all believed that progress was just inevitable.
Exactly, and it felt like a massive win. We were talking about this just outside before we came in, and I was saying to Ashley, who has a lot of erudite references in her book, and in fact just went on Celebrity Mastermind, and your special subject was?
Lady Constance Lytton, a lesser-known suffragette.
I am absolutely loving that, and I want to hear about Lady Constance Lytton tonight. Do you know the Susan Faludi book, Backlash? I've written about it in my book, 6 Conversations We're Scared to Have, just out in paperback. We'll be signing copies this evening, as Ashley is signing copies of Bimbo. But in that, she says that the history of feminism is not like a ladder going up, it's like a corkscrew going round. So you go up, and then, oh no, we're going down again. But we're going up higher, and then going down again, and then go. So each time you go higher, but there's always a backlash. And that's what we're experiencing now. In my book, I call it The Empire Strikes Back. And I feel like right now, the Empire is striking back in a way harder than I thought they were going to.
I just wish he wasn't called Nigel Farage.
Farage? Why?
The Emperor. That's striking back.
Yes, absolutely. It's Nigel Farage, it's the whole Andrew Tate set, all the Manosphere boys, and the ones that are more palatable scare me more. Andrew Tate can only get something to be radical in the Overton window, but it takes more socially acceptable, quote-unquote, nicer voices to push it up into reasonable or even popular before it can get to policy. And we're seeing a lot of that now. Ashley and I were just talking outside about how there's a big push in America to take the vote away from women. And you think, what? To take the vote away from women? But it's genuine and it's real, and they have got it earmarked for it's a 10-year project. And we were talking about this backstage, that this is what they're really good at. They're going, I reckon this will take 10 years. We've got 10 years. Let's go for it. And then, of course, 10 years later, they get what they want. And what we always do is, what do we want? This. When do we want it? Now. And sometimes you can't get it now. You've got to make that 10-year plan. So I feel like Bimbo is a really important book for a lot of girls, especially girls and young women who are right now getting caught up in the womanosphere, which is the kind of complement to the manosphere, or wanting to attract boys who are saying, well, I want a high-value woman, wanting to attract boys who are saying, you're a slut if you've had sex with anybody and that's not what I want. And so you're doing something really, I think, really important and really current, because you are a current voice that I think girls will listen to.
Hope so.
At the Guilty Feminist Waterstone's book club, we always compare a new book with a feminist classic. And tonight we have paired it with Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex. I'm a feminist, but I said to Ashley, shall we pair it with Simone de Beauvoir's Second Sex, as referenced in Ashley's book? But maybe shall we compare it with the abridged edition, because it's only 100 pages. Have you got an I'm a Feminist part for us, Ashley?
Yeah, I am a feminist, but tonight I did change my outfit last minute because you could see my camel toe.
There you go. Well,
It's just anatomy, but it felt wrong. But I do have a vulva, and it did look like I did have one.
Listen, it never really fails to surprise me how much men will just sit there with their hand on their penis. Does anyone else see this? They just sit there, like watching TV, and their legs apart, and they just put their hand... Now that sounds like it's my husband. Because it's like, why are you watching TV next to this person? And sometimes he does do that. But I just notice it with men in general. They just sit there with their hand, and I'm like, or they just grab it, and I just like, what are you doing? Meanwhile, we're changing out of leggings in case you can see that a vulva exists.
Yeah, I looked up, like, why actually is it wrong for it to look like you have the body part that you have? And apparently it's because obviously like the male gaze version of sexiness is very like leave something to the imagination, and it's like titillating and exciting, and you know, a little bit of cleavage is okay but not the nipple. So the camel toe is like, whoa.
Right.
It's not a sexy...
Yeah. You've not hidden enough for me. But it's either you've not... This is something you go into in the book. Whichever way you go, you'll be criticised. You've either not hidden enough or you've not exposed enough.
Yeah, Madonna whore.
Exactly. I'm a feminist, but I used to have some stand-up comedy about... Years ago, I did this show called How to Get Almost Anyone to Want to Sleep With You. And it wasn't about sleeping with people at all. It was about feeling sexy. So it was a kind of empowering show. It was lots of women would come because it was about like walking into the room and thinking, yeah, as opposed to...
When you say lots of women will come, like...
Well, lots of women
How sexy was the show?
Well, lots of women came to the show, Ashley, and also I hope a lot of women came because of it. But I had a bit about sexy clothes in that show, that sexy clothes weren't revealing, but they were unstable. Because, like, you know, have you ever been with someone, like sometimes, very beautiful woman, and she's got just a bit of a, well, I can show you if I unbutton my jumpsuit. It's probably a bit dangerous in Waterstones, isn't it? But it's like, if you've got a sleeve that's just sort of falling down and you see somebody, she's just going like that, and you just think, am I going to see more? Am I going to see more? That is actually more compelling than just someone with a really low cleavage, because you can look at it and go, I've seen that now. But it's just this sort of slidey off bit. So, you know, just some women... Angelina Jolie, I think, has a lot of these outfits where you go, how's that fixed on then? And it never comes off. It never quite comes off, but it's just sort of slipping up and down, sliding up and down.
I've never noticed that about her. I do remember the big leg. I think that's quite iconic now, just the leg in the middle of the slit. But
yeah,
I'm going to be paying more attention to her outfits going forward.
Exactly. So you want something that's just every now and again reveals. Well, we don't want that. We don't want that unless we do, and then we do. It's all about choice. I want to go into Bimbo now. Can I ask you, what made you write this? Because this book is vulnerable and personal, and I listen to a lot of it on audiobook, which is often a great way to... I don't know how... buy the hardback. Publishers in the room, they'll be like, don't tell people to get the audiobook. We've got to get our numbers up here, baby. But I sometimes have two versions, and I listen to a bit on the audiobook, and then I pick up the book again, or I do both audiobook and Kindle. And listening to you read it on the audiobook was really moving. There were times when you were in tears, and it was so beautiful to hear an author allowing that vulnerability out. You write about so many different emotional topics, as well as, you know, really just saying this is what I'd had enough of and being quite analytical. What made you write this book?
I feel like it's the book that I wish I had as a teenage girl when, like so many of us, you're navigating so many different rules and double standards. And I remember feeling really confused and angry at the time, trying to learn and navigate what it meant to be a good girl and to be taken seriously. And then the real catalyst moment was probably when I had my little girl. She is 3 now, but she was 2 at the time of writing. Actually, when I read something out, that will explain it much more. But it's the book I wish I'd had through all the really difficult stages of womanhood. So the book kind of follows girlhood, maidenhood, womanhood, singlehood. I was single between 27 and 33, which I'd say is quite a pinnacle time for a woman, when the noise around running out of time and are you still single and don't you want to have a baby are all quite loud, and that sense of failure that you haven't hit those milestones and timelines by 30. So it's the book that I wish I'd had then when I did feel a huge sense of failure, and the book that I wish I had when I was a new mum and I was like, what? Why? I felt like I've been sold a lie. This is really can we swear?
We broadcast on the internet, and I don't think it's ever heard swearing. No, go for it.
When I was like, this is shit. Like, I feel like I've just been sold this whole lie. And so it's just all of my life experiences. But because I have somebody read it and said, it must be quite exhausting living in your brain. And I was like, yeah, it actually is. Yeah.
That's a really interesting section of the book, actually, the time when you were consciously single and you're really trying to divest yourself from the idea of needing a man, and you start to see the idea of a full-time relationship and very much marriage as something that it's been sold to you as an advantage, as the goal, as the idea and the goal. But you start to go, hold on a minute, how is this good for me? That's good for him. That when you look at the stats, a man has so many fewer responsibilities being married and raising a child.
It literally prolongs his life. A man being married has a longer life expectancy. And guess what happens to a married woman with children?
What?
Less life.
That's right. I've read that in your book today. I had read the book before, by the way, but I like to refresh. I like to read the book to see if I want to do it. But then, you have to read so many books doing this job. So I was refreshing today by listening to the audiobook while I was doing other things. I don't want you to think I've last minuted this. Just, that's an interesting female internal dialogue there, isn't it? It's just like, I'm literally doing my job.
If you were a man, you wouldn't have even read the book.
You'd
just turn up with audacity.
Oh, absolutely wouldn't have even thought about it. But it actually, I did read Simone de Beauvoir later in the day. I read it at university, but who can remember? Because I also drank at university.
I read it at university, and I also drank at university.
But you looked up your notes from Simone de Beauvoir's Second Sex.
Yeah.
You said your notes from uni.
Only very briefly. I've had, but yeah, I did have a look. But I also panicked a bit, so I wrote some of the notes down just in case, because I was like, oh God, what if she asked me something and I don't know?
No.
I feel like, when you haven't done your homework and you get caught.
It's not like a GCSE essay question. It was more that I thought there were some incredible parallels that actually she was saying very similar things to you. Obviously, she's saying it in a 1949 French philosopher way, and you're saying it in a very contemporary lived experience way. But it was shocking how many things she was saying that you were still saying. Some things that I saw, like one thing that Simone de Beauvoir says in The Second Sex is, what would Prince Charming have for occupation if he had not to awaken the Sleeping Beauty? And it really resonated with the way that you were talking about how men were being told all the time, oh, well, she'll want to tie you down. The way that you use these kind of monikers and insulting words for women, ball and chain, that, a woman's trying to catch you and you're trying not to be caught. But actually, like Simone de Beauvoir, you turn that around and say, but hold on, we live less long. We end up doing far more of the domestic duty, far more of the childcare. And how is this a good deal for us? You should be trying to catch us. And also, we're being blamed for the low fertility rates. We're being blamed because, well, women don't want to get married and have babies. And you say, it's not really true. It's like we can't find emotionally available men with whom we want to have a baby. And you go back through your back catalogue and say, well, I didn't find the right partner to have a baby with.
But you're also told, well, don't be too picky.
Yes.
But then if you choose wrong, you'll be blamed.
Yeah, and then you're a single
wrong.
mother and you should have been able to hold on to a man, or you shouldn't have had these babies, if you can't look after them and so on and so on.
I remember growing up and my mum saying that about people, like she just can't hold on to a man.
It's very easy to look back with nostalgia on a time when things were terrible that you didn't live through. Mm-hmm. Because we see idyllic scenes painted in picture books and old photographs of women in elegant long dresses. But if we didn't live through the horror of being not a full citizen, we will never understand it. And you were saying before, that's being repackaged now.
Yeah, I remember saying probably in the early days of my single days, like, oh, I wish I grew up in the 1950s when men wanted to be in relationships and marriage lasted, without really thinking that it was a time before we actually had any rights to leave or even to not be raped within the marriage. So I think, and a lot of people still say it now, don't they? Like, oh, marriages back then just lasted so much longer. Yeah, because we literally couldn't leave. And we were saying that when I grew up, an insult that was quite commonly used against us was like, oh, just get back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich. So we knew that that wasn't valued. The domestic labour, we were told, like, go out, go to uni, get a career, because you don't want to be like a stay-at-home mum. And you don't want to be staying in the kitchen. But now we've kind of reversed that, where it's like, oh, but women now are told they can have it all, and you don't need to have it all. You don't need an education. Your fulfillment is at home.
Yes.
Be at home. How can you do it all? You can't do it all. We actually can't do it all, though, can we?
No.
But maybe the answer is someone else maybe doing some of it.
Yes. What an idea. What if the man did some of it?
Yeah.
Because actually the people I know that are happiest in relationships in terms of the labour distribution are lesbians, because there isn't so much an expectation. But I would say the same about gay men I know who've got children. They've had to reinvent it. They've had to decide, because there isn't this role model of, well, this is what it's meant to look like, and you're not doing your job properly unless you look like this picture-perfect 1950s household, which we've evolved from that. But there are some anchors that are still there. And I think a lot of what your book is about the ideas that we've internalized from the TV shows we've watched, from the way that our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation did things, the assumptions that we've internalized. And the whole book seems to me about a personal journey of you divesting yourself from assumptions.
Yeah, and also, even when we go back to Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, like, obviously we have so much more freedom and independence and laws that work in our favour, but I still feel like the expectations haven't really evolved so much. And I realised that when I was studying Lady Constance Lytton and the fight of the suffragettes. A lot of the pushback in the media is very similar to the pushback that we see now in the media. Obviously, back then it was like the weaponization of the word feminist, which we still see now as like, people still don't identify with the term feminist. And now it's like the weaponization of the term woke. So there are still so many parallels. And the fact that we still ask, like probably... it won't be tonight because this is a great crowd, but most times when I'll go out, somebody will be like, who's looking after the kids? And I'll be like, their dad. And they're like, oh my God, is he really hands-on? And I'm like, yeah, and so am I. So great. But that, even the idea of a hands-on dad, it's like, of course, a hands-on dad should be hands-on, but that should be the expectation, not like this exception of like, oh, he changes nappies. Yeah, and I also go to work. Like, do you know what I mean? I feel like we've evolved so much, but we actually haven't changed as much as we think, which is also why there's still such a stigma for women about being single, because it wasn't so long ago that would have been absolutely outrageous because we had no worth if we weren't chosen. And I could go on, but it's like the passivity of like, she said yes, the bouquet toss is like, hopefully I'll be next. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we're waiting to be chosen. If we behave as wife material, then we'll be picked.
Yes. You really kind of rumble that idea, and you're not at all backward about coming forward about like, what are you hoping to be picked for? And you say you've really you had this vision of being a bride and walking down the aisle, and then you've just said, no, I've got a partnership, but I don't want to get married anymore, because you've found such an internal feminism. You say, I don't judge anyone else for getting married.
And also I would actively encourage anyone to get married, especially if they give up their career to take time out for children or go down to part-time. I think, sadly, laws still only protect you if you're married.
Yes, and
Martin
financially.
Lewis keeps telling me that it's a terrible decision from a financial place. And I was like, well, I'd rather fight the system, Martin. And he's like, well, that's going to cost you.
I absolutely love the way that you handle that, because you look at the logistics, you look at the legals, you look at the financial, but you say, and I'll be thrilled for you if you get married, and I'll be there with bells on. But it's just something that it's boiled up into me to such an extent now inside of me that I don't want the thing that I was sold when I was young I want the thing that works for me that I invent with my partner and my family, which I thought, gosh, this is a real evolution of you as we go through. Because when you're young in the book and you're at school, there are some stories that truly shocked me from your schooling. I didn't know that you were quite Geordie when you first went to school, but you got sent to a posh school, and your experiences there were quite something. Can you talk a little bit about experiences that you had at school?
Yeah, so for context, my parents are from the northeast of England. No one in my family had been to school beyond GCSEs, never done private school. My dad is from a farming background and was a firefighter on the side. My mum had a hair salon. She's also from a farming background. They met young farmers. But then she had a hair salon, and then we grew up in a bed and breakfast. So they just worked all the time. And then essentially I got a scholarship to a really posh school, which is now why I have a very posh accent. And the secondary school I went to, so the prep school, which was amazing. The first thing that happened culturally was that it was really normal to snog there from like the age of 8. So I, on my first night, basically got locked in the common room, it was called, with an older boy, and was told I wasn't allowed out until I snogged him. And then we used to play this game called Spin the Pencil, because we didn't have a bottle, because we were children. And so snogging was this really normal thing. So when I went to my secondary school, or the summer before I went, and we had like this posh ball thing, and everyone from the school was going to be there. So obviously it's like, great time to make a good impression. Sadly, I went to an all-boys rugby school, so it was the first year of them allowing girls in school, reluctantly allowing girls in school. That's an important point for the atmosphere that we went into. They weren't privy to the spin the pencil being a very normal thing, so I went and snogged all the boys, because that's what we did. And so I basically started school at 14, having only ever snogged as like basically the school slag. So I dealt with like a lot of slut shaming, but not just from the boys, but also from the teachers. And I remember getting detention once for hugging my brother. He didn't get detention, but the teacher was like, well, what are the people in the town going to think when they see a young girl canoodling with a boy? So it was very much like a boys will be boys. And I don't even think I've put this in the book, because I feel like that's a whole book in itself, but they had it was just quite a wild culture. So they did this thing called dekegging, and it was usually the first 15 rugby team who were like 18, and I remember being maybe 15 at the time, walking back from sports where I was in a tracksuit. I was on my period and I hadn't shaved my pubes, which when you're that age, it was a really big deal. And then basically they would target a girl, run after you and try and pull your pants down.
Oh my God.
So imagine...
How old were you?
Like 15, 16.
Oh, God.
So obviously you always knew when they were coming, because you could see them sort of like walking in, like getting faster and faster, and then like charging at you. So I remember running for my life. And then I remember being in like the recovery mode, being like, oh my God, I can't let them pull my pants down, because then they might see my tampon string, and maybe they'll see my pubes, and that will just be like the worst thing in the world. And then I don't know if I was like laughing or screaming, but I got told off by the teacher, because I was like attracting the attention and being loud. So that was like, in a nutshell, there's so many stories, but that was kind of the environment that we were in. So it wasn't just like navigating the kind of double standards and slut shaming against the boys. And it was so bad that if a boy was caught talking to us by another boy, they were called a slimer. It was like, we don't talk to the girls. But yeah, it was very much enforced by the teachers.
It quite shocked me, some of the stories where the teachers would blame the girl for what happened. There was one story that a boy came and
pulled a moonie.
Took his pants down and like to show the girls his bum, and so a girl in response, he was outside like the girls' common room, and so
it was like a bay window, so he like fully trowed down.
So a girl flashed her boobs as a response.
No, it was her Tweety Pie bra. Guys, it was peak Licenza era. Everybody had great bras, apart from me, because my boobs were too big. Another very sad time for me. But she had a Tweety Pie bra on, but it just so happened that the house mistress was in the bay window on the other side, so she saw it all unfold. and then came in. I'm still actually friends with the girl, and that was actually my first time answering back to an adult, because I was so angry because she started like slut shaming Jenny, and I was like, he just pulled a moonie at us. She didn't even like show actual skin. And she was like, yes, well, the boys can do that and you need to navigate how to be ladies. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I had a lot of anger. I just didn't really know that was like me in my early feminist era.
It really surprised me. And the thing is, I know that, we've moved on from there, but it is actually reversing now because of the manosphere, that boys at school are now, 15-year-old girls tell me, the boys are unspeakable at their schools, because they've all been drinking all the Andrew Tate Kool-Aid. And when you left school, you'd internalised a lot of this into your dating life.
Not even in my dating life, but just in my attitudes in general, because also another theme was like, Ashley, you can be beauty or you can be brains. Do you want to be taken seriously? So it was almost like reject makeup, reject hair dye, reject any of the frivolous, girly things if you want to be taken seriously. So of course I did want to be taken seriously. So I rejected all of that. Then obviously I learned very much that if you're a girl and you sleep around, you're a slut. And it was also like the era of Cruel Intentions, and I just wanted to be like Reese Witherspoon, like the virginal. I didn't want to be like Sarah Michelle Gellar. So I left school with complete internalized misogyny and what we'd know now to be like pick me energy. But it was kind of like the rules that I had been prescribed. And I remember my boyfriend at the time had gone on a gap year, and he came back and was friends with this girl that he met there. And I was like, I don't get it. Because he told me that she'd had some one-night stands, and I was like, I don't understand why you'd want to be friends with sluts. And it's so mortifying, but I also get it that was and also it's probably the trauma of being slut shamed, to be honest, that that was almost like a survival mechanism for me, that I was like, if you want to avoid that, have a boyfriend, a very popular boyfriend, because then the other boys will leave you alone because you're protected in some way. But obviously the consequence of having attitudes like that, and also being told that it's up to women and girls to keep ourselves safe, was that then when I had experiences of sexual assault, I blame myself because I didn't do the things that are meant to keep us safe. And I think well-meaning people still have conversations today with daughters about how you can't go out like that, don't wear that. But we all know, sadly, that a bad rapist isn't going to be like, oh, she's wearing trousers.
No.
Oh, she's got running shoes on. Do you know? So, but it's but we still unknowingly and sometimes well-meaning still prescribe that to our girls.
Have you seen the exhibition of clothes that women and girls were wearing when they were raped? Mm-hmm. It's so moving. You can Google it. But some of it's like an Elsa nightie, or it's like a ghost Halloween costume, or a lot of the time it's just tracksuits and things like that. And I just wept when I looked at it. I was like, oh my God, we've been sold such a lie. I mean, if that helped, Victorian women wouldn't have been raped, which they were. If that helped, you wouldn't see rape in countries where women are completely covered up. It's so absurd to suggest that that's what's going on there. You write extremely movingly about assault. When you read it on the audiobook, you're crying, and I was crying listening to you, because you were saying, I don't really even want to talk about it, but I feel like I have to, and I obviously don't want you to have to talk about it now, but what made you say, I am going to talk about it, this is important?
So obviously the book is ultimately it's about shame, right? The shame that we place on women from basically the moment we're born. It starts with people, again, well-meaning, being like, oh, what a beautiful baby, you're going to have to lock her up when she's older. Where versus a little boy who might be called a heartbreaker, there's never any mention of he's good looking, you're going to have to lock him up to keep people safe, or it.
Oh no, I knew someone who had a little onesie and it said lock up your daughters on it. It was for a boy. I mean, this was a long time ago, but I remember at the time, I think it was 20 years ago, and I didn't at the time kind of clock it in the way that now I'm like, oh my God, imagine buying a boy a onesie that says lock up your daughters. I mean, but again, it's never lock up your sons. That should be lock up your sons, shouldn't it? Shouldn't it be lock up your sons?
Yeah, of
if
course
they're the
I mean,
ones
of course.
marauding, why are you locking up your daughters? It's literally mad.
Yeah.
What we go along with.
You know, all the labels, whether it's like bossy, slut, prude, frumpy, they all are kind of like lessons in shame to make us be like, okay, well, oh God, we're too frumpy, slut, right, okay, not like that. And so you kind of navigate womanhood learning shame. And so with sexual assault, I was like, obviously you also like think about the kind of like landscape of the British press and the sort of sensationalized stories that can come from you sharing something like that. And, you know, I had to think like, how will I feel if it's like rape survivor or, you know, all the kind of and I was like, I wouldn't really feel comfortable with that. And also the fact that I didn't come forward or I didn't do all the right things that somebody should do, that I was like, I'm not a perfect rape survivor
Oh
because I stayed friends with him after, because for a long time I thought, well, I actually cared more that him and his friends didn't think I was a slut. And, you know, it took me like a really long time to kind of accept what had happened. And so the reason I put it in, that at the time of writing, it was also when, you know, Giselle Pellico's trial was going on. And I think she like was so amazing at standing up and saying like, no, the shame has to change sides. And the fact that she went through, I mean, the most horrific, not that there should ever be a scale of rape, but, you know, she really did help me be like, why do I feel shame and like this dirty secret? Because even though I never really told anyone, I still thought about it every day, and it almost felt like my dirty secret. And so then I put it into the book because I was like, you can't write. I was like, if I had a daughter, and ultimately like the goal is, right, that I'm writing about all these things that hopefully our daughters and daughters' don't have to navigate all of these things. And I was like, I can't, what would I, if God forbid it ever happened to them, I wouldn't want them to carry it like their own dirty secret for 25 years. And actually, even if you choose not to go forward for whatever reason, even if it's because like your trauma can't allow you to be put on trial, which is sadly what happens with the judicial system in not just our country but around the world. Like there's some horrific cases that I speak about briefly in the book about, like, you know, a woman that was raped in a toilet in Italy, and she didn't lock the door in a nightclub, and so the judge ruled that actually she gave him like
protected
just
herself
like
better,
didn't give like a strong enough signal, because the unlocked door could have been seen as like a welcome in. So yeah, that I put it all in the book, and I also put the like worry of victim blaming that could come back on me, because I almost thought, well, if I put it all in, then no one can question it, of like, why was I wearing this, or why was I drunk, or why was, you know, that, or I basically did all the things that we tell girls not to do.
Yes, and it's so much of it is, again, your book, but also Simone de Beauvoir's book is about the story we tell. It's not really about the things that happen, it's about the way that we shape them. And I think so many women relate to that, and no doubt some men and some non-binary people too relate to that we reframe our stories about ourselves in order that we do not have to carry greater trauma. And so this is why one of the many reasons women don't report it more, the main being nothing's going to happen. And then there will be no justice. And then you've been through a second trauma of reporting it or going to a police station and going to court. And, you know, we all know people that's happened to. That story is really, really moving the way you tell it. But also you cry again when you're talking about other people, and like, you know that some of the readers of this book will have their own stories like this.
I mean, I do typically cry a lot, especially I was crying today on TV, but for justified reason in my thing. And, you know, when I did the audiobook, it was really important to me actually that, because I it's not like obviously I didn't plan to cry, but I cried. And I suppose a lot of it is like probably still the shame or the worry of talking about something like that. And I was asked if I wanted to re-record it. But But it's actually really important to me actually that people do hear the non-sanitized version, because I think especially as women often we're told like to be taken seriously, we can't be emotional. Obviously like anger and Donald Trump and Elon Musk having Twitter spats is perfectly not emotional. But if we show any emotion, then it's like we can't be taken seriously. But actually I feel like there's so much power in actually I want people to hear how horrific and painful some of these things are that we have to navigate. And I'm actually like proud that I kept that in the audiobook.
I thought the vulnerability was incredibly powerful. And you also talk about having children and the emotional aftermath of that, which was, I thought, an extremely brave piece of writing that I think a lot of people will connect to. Mm-hmm. And your whole like motherhood journey really took me by surprise, like how many emotional turns there were in that I wasn't expecting.
It's been a roller coaster.
Yeah. And you're very happy in motherhood now.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no
apart
one's
from running on empty, but they are amazing, of course. And it's funny because I really did struggle, not for the first 4 months, but after. But the interesting thing is that I never, or not never, but in that single chapter, I came to the decision that I didn't want children, and I didn't see children in my future, but. When I got pregnant, I was kind of like, well, how bad could it be? Like everyone's been telling me that I'll regret it and that I won't know love like it. And it kind of in a way felt like fate because we were in this lockdown and it was like so much death and despair that then I had this kind of like life and thing to focus on. And I was like, maybe it's fate. So then, when I was really struggling, I was like, I feel like do other people enjoy this? Like, I don't get it. And I had like all these like internal thoughts, like, I don't get how this is meant to be fun. Like, I remember at one point doing like finger puppets, being like, oh my God, I used to live such a fun, cool life. And like, is this meant to fulfill us? Am I a bad woman? And am I, I didn't like going to, obviously in lockdown, there were no baby clubs, but I went to one once and I was like, I can't do this. But then so in the night, and it didn't help that my son didn't sleep for a year. He'd wake up every hour. So I was obviously like chronically sleep deprived, very depressed. But I remember like Googling, like, is it normal to regret motherhood? But I loved him and I felt so guilty because I remember, anyone that has kids, like you wake up in the night and there's elements where it's like just you and them and they're so like pure and beautiful and gorgeous. And I remember feeling so guilty that I was like, and so when I'd Google, is it normal to regret motherhood? Like, it's obviously such a taboo topic and we'll never really know what the actual study and stats are because it's a very difficult thing for lots of people to admit, especially out loud. But then I thought, I would love to be a dad. I think if I'd have been a dad...
Oh, I've said that. I'm a feminist, but while I don't want to be a mum, I'd love to have been a dad. Oh, it must be amazing. Like an
because
old
also
dad.
I'd get praised for being hands-on, for coming home after doing work and changing the nappy. And then, I was like...
Never mind changing the nappy, reading a story, doing the fun
But
part.
anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, like, good dads shouldn't be praised, but I was like, I feel like if dads are expected to go through the physical changes and give up careers, even if it's temporary, and, just be at home, I think we'd have more compassion for when new mums find it so difficult. We wouldn't be like, but this is your calling, or like, is this not enough for you? And also to anyone that thinks, well, what are my children going to think when they grow up and one day are able to read that I struggled? It's like, well, hopefully if they ever decide to have children, or if their sibling does or a friend does, they might understand what it's actually could be like for someone, and maybe they'll be able to have more compassion and empathy. And if my son is straight and has a partner, like, he might get it.
Yeah.
And so shouldn't we be able to talk about struggles more? Because I feel like they are, like, obviously we all have different struggles and some people will love it. Like some of my friends, they love that 6 month to 18 month thing, or they'll say to me like, oh my God, don't you feel ready for another baby? And I'm like, ugh, no, never again. But obviously we're all different and we're going to have different struggles because our circumstances are different and our likes and dislikes are different. But for some reason, when it comes to motherhood, we kind of apply this universal, well, this should complete you.
You said your dad wrote you a really nice letter when you were in the Big Brother house.
You know when you go on a reality TV show or when you watch reality TV, you're like, why the fuck are they crying? They've been there for like a week. Have they never been on holiday? Because like their family write a letter and they're like, and I had that attitude. And then
Because you said they didn't want you to go in because they hated the show. And
they've always hated, like, so I was like, I must have been about, I don't know if I was 12 or 13 when Big Brother came out, and I loved it. I watched it 24 hours live on E4. Like, I loved it. And my dad would always be like, and do you think they're normal? Do you think that's normal? And even when the celeb one came out, he'd be like, what, and you think that person's normal? And so he just like always hated it. So when I said I was doing Made in Chelsea, my mum was like, would you not have been better doing Geordie Shore? And I was like, well, I think if you knew the difference, you'd be really pleased. And then my dad was, when I said I'm going to be on TV, he was like, oh God, please not Big Brother. So then when I actually was doing Big Brother, he thought it was a joke at first. And I was like, no, I am actually doing Big Brother. But then, yeah, they refused to come to the launch. So when I was in there, obviously you have like the slight paranoia of like, oh my God, I'm being watched all the time. Are people going to like me? But I was also like, are my parents going to like me? Because my dad was honestly like, when I said to him, but Dad, I'll be able to buy a house, like I'll be able to buy a flat in London. And he was like, and you think that's worth humiliating yourself for life, do you? And I was like, a bit, yeah. Like, I'll get on the property ladder in London. Like, how else would I be able to ever do that? And then, so when they wrote the letter, he actually did say, I'm proud of you, I've still got it framed. But he did also say, be careful of the wine. Now, at the time, I do love wine, but I was also like slightly flirtatious with a very problematic man called Genuine. So I was like, within the house. So I was like, in my head, I was like, does he mean the wine or does he mean the genuine? I still don't know.
You've not asked?
No.
You think it might have been code, like a letter in World War II?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably a bit of both, to be honest.
That was not the part of the book that was most like Simone de Beauvoir, but...
She wrote something very similar from her experience of going on reality TV.
I did enjoy it. I'd love to see Simone de Beauvoir in the Big Brother house, though, because that was actually, you were asked to do it because it was the anniversary of the women getting the vote. So they put in loads of powerful women, they said.
Powerful women and problematic men.
Why did they put problematic men?
It was like candy for me back then. I hadn't quite figured out. I was a feminist, but I didn't know how to attract unproblematic men.
Wow. I wasn't asked. In the 2028, I'll be asked for the 100-year anniversary of all women getting the vote. There were some other things, though, that did remind me of Simone de Beauvoir. She says in The Second Sex, to catch a husband is an art, to hold him is a job. That really reminded me of things you said. In fact, when you mentioned Simone de Beauvoir, you say that she believed that jealousy and competition between girls wasn't innate, but a product of the patriarchal structures that we are raised within, a system that trains us to see each other not as allies, but rivals for male attention and approval. And in The Second Sex, she explores how we internalize these dynamics early on, often turning our frustrations inwards or against each other, rather than at the system that restricts. And yes, I spotted the same thing when I reread it. She says, women's mutual understanding comes from the fact that they identify themselves with each other, but for the same reason, each is against the other. The kind of idea of the system pitting us against each other.
But don't you see that so much? It's like, you know, it's like child-free women versus mothers, I feel like, are pitted against each other. So I talk a lot about my own internalised misogyny against mums that I realised once I became a mum, because I was like, ugh, mums are so negative. I'm not going to be negative because I've got a great mindset and I can run marathons. And then I was like, oh, right, it's the people are negative because actually the system makes it literally impossible to recover, parent, even the fact that school hours haven't evolved since women started working. Working mums versus stay-at-home mums, not something that men, breastfeeding versus bottle feeding. Like, I mean, the whole thing, I feel like we're constantly pitted against each other for everything. Women who grow old gracefully. I want to grow old disgracefully. Because I feel like it's like basically about accepting that you're invisible, isn't it? It's like, oh, I'm not going to dye my hair or do anything. Like, I'm just going to disappear. Because I don't want to be like lamb dressed as mutton. And, you know, all of these phrases that essentially are to shame you because obviously men only find really young girls attractive. So like, don't be old and show us anything because we don't like that.
Yes, the constant noise, that really comes across, the constant buzzing.
A lady on Instagram messaged me the other night and she's 68 and said, I just want to say, after seeing your lamb versus mutton, or lamb dressed as mutton post.
Is it mutton versus dressed as
lamb dressed as mutton. Mutton dressed as lamb.
Yes, because lamb dressed as mutton is a 16-year-old in 27
To be fair, that's just a trad wife.
Yes.
So she actually said to me, I watched your reel about mutton dressed as lamb, and I actually went out tonight in a corset for the first time. And she sent me, it was actually 4 a.m. and I was like, I really want to know what she was doing. But she looked great. She wore a corset, and I was like, go on, girl, like more of that. Like dress for yourself. Like obviously, if you don't want to wear a corset, don't wear a corset. Also quite problematic if you think about it.
Because you're squeezing yourself.
Yeah, everything.
Women used to, when women wore corsets, they used to faint all the time. That's why they had fainting couches.
Yeah.
Because they were so constricted. What we've gone through.
Do you think it was because they were
generations-
constricted, or do you think it was because what they had to put up with from men? They just faint.
It was just to
get out of it.
It would be quite good if we had fainting couches in nightclubs in that case, and bars, just like, oh God, he's talking about crypto. Oh, just fanning oneself on a couch. I'm so sorry. I've fainted from your story. Listen, I would love to throw some questions over to the audience, but first, could you read a little bit of the book, just so they get a little flavour of how it's written?
Yeah, I'll probably just read a bit of the beginning, but I'm just going to read it on my phone but pretend that I'm reading it from the book.
Well, I mean, you've really blown the illusion now by telling us that.
It's just in case anyone saw and they thought I was a bit of a weirdo, but I just find it easier.
No, I would just assume you were texting.
I'm actually live streaming. No, I'm not. My daughter Ada is 2 years old. When I look at her, I see a girl who is confident, loud and proud. A girl who looks at herself in the mirror with love, amazement and wonder. She loves her body. She's not scared to speak her mind and tell us no. She's happy. When I look at her, I see myself as a child, because that was me too once. Probably you too. No little girl is born a bimbo, nor does she arrive into this world as a prude, a bitch or a slag. So why is it, by the time we enter our 20s, many of us feel so small? When we look at our bodies, we no longer feel wonder and awe, but shame and worry. We stop feeling comfortable saying no because we worry that will make us unlikable. We start believing we're not enough on our own and we need to find another half to be complete. We're taught to downsize ourselves, to be slight, quiet and palatable. I realised that my insecurities, lack of self-esteem and faltering confidence were so completely wrapped up in the various messages I'd learned about what it means to be a good, attractive or acceptable woman. And perhaps even more, it was tangled up with the double standards everywhere in society, with one benchmark for women and an entirely different one for men. To rediscover my confidence, I had to untie all the knots about womanhood that were eating me up inside. To unlearn anything we've been bred to believe, we first need to understand it. This book will tell the story of how I got there. Spoiler alert, for me, the secret to self-acceptance was feminism.
Lovely, lovely. Does anyone in the audience have a question for Ashley?
Love the bimbo colours, by the way.
I've somehow dressed myself as the bimbo, but
I love it.
I can't help myself. Thank you, thank you both of you. And I just want to say the way that you articulate yourself has helped me be able to articulate myself in friends and family circles when I talk about these things. So thank you.
I love that. Thank
you.
you.
Really, honestly, the language that you use is really helpful. So I'm 32 and I'm single, and I really relate to so much of what you've spoken about, and I know you speak about. But I guess in terms of finding peace with that, and when it is something that you want and you want to find love, and you do, and I so want to be able to be it's okay, I'm independent and I don't need that. But there is a part of me that still deeply feels like there's something wrong with me, that I've not been chosen, and just very unsuccessful in finding that love. And I suppose, I just wondered what you thought about that.
I think it's very normal. and I was the same. And I think for me, like finding single joy wasn't me saying, I don't want to meet anyone ever. And I don't want all of those things. Because also a lot of it is so deeply rooted. And also it's okay to want someone to be able to text you saying good morning, or to make you a coffee in the morning, or to have children if that's what you want. Like, I think often the idea of enjoying being single is kind of sold as like, well, you shouldn't want those things. Of course you can want those things. I think it's just knowing that we have time, even if it feels like we don't, and that by spending all the time looking, it doesn't make it happen any faster. So you can learn to do the thing. I always think of it as a chapter. And I was speaking to my group of friends at the moment who are all like late 30s, early 40s. Most of us have kids. I've got a couple of friends who don't have kids, some because they didn't want kids and they're actually thriving. Very jealous. And some who really, really want kids, and some who've spent a fortune on freezing eggs and IVF, and they just haven't met someone, and they really want to meet someone. But I think their standards have got higher and they know who they are, and they've also seen us navigating, I say us as like the whole group, navigating the difficulties of relationships in the modern day. And when I was speaking to my group of friends, even the ones of us who really, really like our partners, we feel there is an element that we have been sold a lie in the notion of happy ever after, because it's still so... I thought we were really equal, Tommy and I, but there is still such a inequality, even just in how society expects things from us. And, you know, I get told often that I work too hard and that it's not good for the kids, but he would never get told that. So I think we all feel collectively like we wish we didn't waste such a amazing chapter. And I know I'm not saying that you're suddenly going to be like, oh, great, because I also remember people saying to me, you'll find someone when you're not looking. And I was like, you literally fucking met on a dating app. You were looking. Why does everyone say you'll meet someone when you're not looking? Like, you were looking.
When you least expect it.
But it's more that I think enjoy the chapter. Like when I found single joy, I think it was realising that you can have happiness and love. Because another thing I used to say was like, but I've got so much love and no one to give it to. But I started giving it to like my girlfriends and to travel and I started scuba diving, quite niche. But you know, there'll be like whatever it is. But then I met really good friends, but also I met really good like men from doing the things that I liked. And I always say like, you could wait to not, like you might be like, I'm going to save the Maldives for my honeymoon, but then you might be with a guy who's allergic to sand, and so you're like, why didn't I go to the Maldives? Do you know what I mean? So it's like, and actually maybe you'll meet that person in the Maldives. So I think it's just about knowing that being happy in a relationship isn't always guaranteed. There'll be loads of your friends who have, you know, got the timeline, but they might feel really lonely and they might look at you and be really envious that you have the freedom. And so whilst it doesn't make it better, it's like try and think of it as a chapter and do all the things you love, and your person might be waiting in those spaces. And never ever lower your standards. Doesn't matter how old you get, because...
Yes, there are people wanting to applaud it. Never ever.
Thank you. And I love the solo holidays, by the way. I love it.
Love what?
The solo holidays.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
That's what I started doing in that chapter, and that's what helped me find single joy, solo travelling, and I still go.
I think that's a very good advice. There's a question here.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Abby, pronouns are she, they. I was just thinking about all these names that you've been called and how much public scrutiny you're under. And I personally am finding it really hard with the name calling and trying to build up my own personal confidence and resilience. And I feel like, what do you do to build yourself up and kind of repel the things that are said to you or said about you so that your confidence is unwavering?
I am naturally quite a sensitive person, and so I think I'd be lying if I said I never let it ever get to me. And we're always told to have a tougher skin, and I always think like, I don't want to be tougher, I want people to be kinder. So I think that's a really important thing to say, that I'm not going to pretend that horrible things don't upset me. I think it's realising that it's a reflection very much of someone else, and you don't need to justify who you are and what your intentions are if people are choosing not to see that. So, you know, I know that I'm a good person who cares really deeply about equality, and that should be a very uncontroversial thing. I also know that because of how I look, the fact that I'm a woman, that I will get scrutinised by both men and women based on my intelligence and, you know, all the things that lots of people won't agree with peers, or well, lots of people don't agree with peers, or Nick, but nobody questions their intelligence. So I have to remind myself that actually it's a reflection of their misogyny, their internalized misogyny, and all I can do is keep knowing that I can make a difference by continuing to do what I do. You could try and please everyone, and I really did. I used to try and please everyone, especially that Made in Chelsea era. I remember there was this thing that I was too nice and therefore I was fake. And I remember saying to my friend Steph, how can I be less nice? And she was like, you don't have to be less nice. You just need to stop hanging out with twats. And now, actually, I'm really proud to be really nice, and I'm really proud that I cry on TV because sometimes I'm like, the world is burning. How are we not all crying? And I want people to know that it's okay to feel things and it's okay to be sad. And actually, loads of the people who used to say I was too fake actually come to me now when they're going through hard times. It's called trauma bonding because I love it, because I want the bullies to like me now. But I think it's just knowing, what's that phrase, what Sally says about Susie says more about Sally than it does about Susie. So sometimes you just have to think how sad that it's so hard to be happy, especially at the moment. The news is exhausting. I feel like everyone I know, no matter how privileged, is struggling in some way. And imagine investing that time being horrible to someone. So whoever it is, you just kind of almost have to have empathy, but don't let it rock you. Another thing I always say about myself, my coping mechanisms in my head is I'm a palm tree, because a palm tree can weather serious storms, and I don't think they ever fall down. Do they fall down? I always said they never fall down. Maybe they do. But I'm a palm tree. Sometimes things will get thrown at me, but I know that if I ever say the wrong thing or get it wrong, I'll apologise. And anyone that doesn't see me, they're not my people. And that's okay, because I don't like everyone. I personally probably wouldn't go and type it and tell them. But I don't like everyone.
I find tricky. When people come onto my wall and I'm like, you've bothered to find me. And I'm like, I see things on the internet I don't like all the time. I can't imagine going, where is that person? I think they need to know. Just I can't even imagine it. Even someone as grotesque as Andrew Tate, go and find him. I wouldn't bother. I wouldn't engage, and I wouldn't want him to have the satisfaction of an engagement. But it just wouldn't even occur to me that, he must need to know what I think. He doesn't care what I think. He's made that abundantly clear. Why would you go and find that person? Do you find it weird when people maybe see you on breakfast television?
I just wanted to come and say you wear way too much makeup. Okay.
It's
I love
to
it.
me. I guess
I'm going to wear more now,
yeah.
just to piss you off.
I had someone, it was just Christmas Eve. I remember that. It was Christmas Eve, and I'd just done a bunch of different telly shows. And at the time, I was favouring a smoky eye, dark smoky eye, which I thought looked very dramatic. But a bunch of different makeup artists had done me a dark smoky eye. And a woman came into my DMs and said, just so you know, that's not how you do a smoky eye. And I've seen you on, I'd done QI or Rob Rinder's End of the Year show or something like that, that you're doing it wrongly. And I was like...
But also, this is how I do a smoky eye.
Yeah.
Why don't you do your smoky eye, how you want to do a smoky eye?
But it was bizarre.
I was going for the Claudia Winkleman look, actually.
Well, exactly. She's a great example of someone who looks incredible and doesn't give a fuck about how anybody else thinks about her because she's got a look. And anyway, I was doing a dark smoky eye at the time. Maybe it was too dark, but it was Christmas Eve. Why did I'd knocked off work. I wasn't doing a smoky eye. I was having a nice drink with my family. And I just thought, I don't need this confidence knock on Christmas Eve. I don't need this in my life. Go away. Like, why would you need to tell me something derogatory about myself on
But
Christmas
also,
Eve?
That says a lot about that person that on Christmas Eve, rather than being joyful with friends or family or doing anything, they're really sad. So that's why I sometimes think it helps me to be like, I feel really sorry for that person. So even if they're really horrible, I'm like, I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it's like I wouldn't go and because I'm trying too hard to be happy, and also I'm trying to unlearn what they say. Like being horrible to someone is like drinking poison and hoping they die. Like you're actually only really putting the misery in yourself because. So yeah,
it's true. In the old days, you just watch TV and you'd say to whoever was there, "Oh, I'm not sure about her makeup," but now you can go, "Where is she? She needs to know that."
Yeah.
It's not right. It's we're all too parasocial, all of us. Who else has got a question?
Hello, thank you. I have a question. It's sort of, you were talking about marriage there and whether people have got the right people. It's a question about a friend of mine who has a few years ago got married, and she's just had a baby, and it has become apparent to us, who all of us are school friends, and we went to a school that was all girls and we were all raised to be very independent, and I'm very lucky to have been in that environment. And it's become apparent to us that she has perhaps been slightly changed in her opinion since marrying this certain person, and her role has really become quite a trad wife role, which is very different to the person that we once knew. So I wonder whether you have ever had situations like that in your life where you have got someone that has changed slightly and become not anti-feminist, but very different to the sort of feminist views you had, and maybe some advice about how you would go about speaking to them and sort of understanding how to sort of get them back in a way.
It's quite a tricky question because I feel like it's very much down to a relationship you have. I can certainly say that I've gone through relationships, especially when I was younger, and being a bit of a chameleon. And I suppose because back then I wasn't the palm tree, I was very much like the coconut, trying to attach myself to a palm tree to know who I was, if that's a good analogy. And I suppose you can't tell someone they're wrong. You have to almost let them figure it out. And so obviously I don't know your friend. She might also be going through a phase of motherhood because it changes you so much. Like it literally does change your brain, and maybe she's feeling joy in that role. I had internalized misogyny about stay-at-home, domesticated women, and actually I feel really empowered in this. And yeah, again, I don't know like the specifics of it all, but it's like you almost have to let people go through it. And if it is because she's in a coercive relationship, you also have to, all you can do is show her that you love her and that you're there for her and you'll always be there for her. And I also think with friendships, it's quite unrealistic, but a bit like romantic relationships, that we expect and value friendships for lengths of time. And I used to get, if my friends weren't aligned with me in specific periods of my life, and I noticed it a lot when I was single, and a lot of my friends went on to have long-term relationships, I felt really ditched by them, and I got really angry, and I fell out with them all because I was like, I'm lonely, they're not understanding me. But actually now I saw it again the other way, that actually when I had a child, after spending however many years saying I didn't want children, and so loads of my friends were like, we don't want children, and then I felt really isolated and lonely that they didn't care. But it's like now I realise that actually it's okay for friends, like you can love someone and show you're there, but you can go through different periods and it doesn't have to be a big argument. But I guess like the main thing is you just want her to know that you're always there, and if whatever it may be, so you don't have to discuss her changing attitudes, but you can let her know that if ever she needs you, you're always there. Don't know if that's helpful. It's really hard when you don't know specific situations.
Sorry, that's probably a bad question, but thanks very much indeed.
It's a great question.
Who else had a question? Somebody here and somebody there.
I'll sit up a bit. Hi, Ashley.
Hello.
We've met before. We've got a couple of friends in common, I think, in our friendship group. So I know the accent that you have now in Relationship Book is the accent that you got when you went to private school. And I've just listened to the bit of your audiobook where you're talking about that, and you say that you went from Geordie accent to the accent you have now. And that resonated with me because I grew up in Brazil. I came to England as a child with a really heavy Brazilian accent, and I sound like this now. And I remember trying so hard to sound English and to fit in. And I find, depending on which friendship group I'm with, I can sometimes dip into a different accent. And I was saying to my friend on the way up here, I wonder if that happens with you, Ashley, because obviously we see on TV, we see the accent you have now. I know a couple of your friends and you kind of sound the same. Do you ever find yourself dipping back into Geordie or dipping into another accent when you're with other people because you were fairly young when that started?
I feel the opposite. When I go back up north, I feel like the poshest person in the world. That I'll be like, hello, old chum. Fancy some champagne? And I'm like, why am I being so posh? Like, I think in my head, I don't sound posh. And then when I listen to myself back, I'm like, is that me? I'm really posh. But it's funny because it's like when I go to America, you suddenly feel like you're like, oh, tea and crumpets. And you're like, why am I?
My husband's like that. I sort of lean into the intonation and wherever I go, and I think, do they think I'm taking the piss when I'm in LA? Because suddenly I'm talking like this, and I'm like, why am I doing this? And my husband becomes David Niven. He just becomes like, Noel Coward. I say, do I have a martini? And I'm like, why are you talking like that? He's like, I don't know. And it's because he's gripping onto his identity, whereas I'm like, is this what we're doing here?
Yeah.
I had to film something for a job I was doing when I was in Australia. So they sent me this camera crew, and then I did it. And then when I got back to Britain, they went, yeah, you're going to have to dub it. You're going to have to do like ADR. I said, why? And they said, because this isn't how you sound. And in the rest of, when people meet you off the project, they're going to go, but that's not you. I said, what do you mean? And honestly, I sounded like I was in Kath and Kim. I had this really Australian accent, and I was like, I don't sound like that when I'm there. Like my husband was like, you phoned me when you're there, or I'm there with you. You don't sound like that. We don't know what happened to this day. We don't know what happened. I didn't sound that Australian when I lived there, so we'll never know.
Do you know what I always say? When people are like, what's your biggest insecurity? And they're expecting you to be like, my C-section scar or my tummy or my boobs or whatever it is. I'm always like, my accent, because I feel like that's the one thing that, especially, there's something about being in England or Britain as a whole, I guess, that there is so much judgment and assumption in the way you talk. And there's this real idea, and I mean, doing a show like Made in Chelsea didn't help, but it's like, sometimes I'll pick up people being like, well, you don't understand because you grew up with a silver spoon. And I'm like, what? The spoon that my dad used to like give birth to cat? Like, it's like but then I feel really like I'm really proud to be from the Northeast, and it doesn't show in like the way I sound. And I feel like there's something about accents that we make, there's just so much pressure. And obviously, of course, we feel pressure when we're young if we have a different accent. That's like the worst possible thing as a child, to be different in any way. And the way you speak is such an easy target for being teased. And obviously, going to a very posh school, there was like an element of classism. So I adapted the accent that it was almost like survival. But then I also get it all the time now of like, she's fake, she faked her accent. And it didn't help that when I was in the Big Brother house, somehow my dad started getting like journalists call them up. You know how most people know just to like not say anything? My dad is like a real chatter. So he's like, well, actually, I know she doesn't speak like that, man. She faked her accent. So I came out and all of the thing are like, Ashley James faked her accent, as if I'm like pretending to be posh. And I was like, Dad, why did you speak to them? He's like, they just called us up for a chat.
But it's true, when you're a kid, that you will sound like your peers. And kids, they morph in. It's true that any child of immigrants will sound like their peers in about 25 minutes, because it's basic survival. So if they're going to send you to a posh school, then they can't expect you to come home any other way but the way that, like, it's survival. Survival. I don't want to stand out. When you're a kid, and if everyone's got a certain sort of school bag, and you don't have that same, you just feel it. You feel like, oh my God, I'm different. Everyone's going to look at me. Everyone's going to point it out. Maybe the school bag was personal. It's a very specific example. There's somebody down here.
Thank you so much. You've made us laugh, you've made us cry a little bit, and it's so nice to kind of ride that wave of emotions, especially when I think we're pushed all the time to sound strong, whereas I think you're pushing us to sound resilient, and that's just really lovely. So thank you, firstly, to both of you. And I just wanted to ask, so the book is formulated and your story is formulated of all these formative experiences that you've written about, and I wondered, has writing the book itself been a formative experience? Like, how has that changed you, and in what ways, and what surprised you, or what did you get to put down in the process of writing?
Not a bad question, by the way. But I feel like it was very cathartic to write it all down and realise that so many of the things that we have been made to feel so ashamed of, even if it's decisions we made or opinions we had or things we said to people growing up, like so much of it isn't our fault. You know, like we are all absorbing different attitudes and we're trying to survive and we're trying to be good women. And so I think it's just realising that actually it's okay to have made mistakes, whatever they may be, and it's okay to be learning and unlearning all the time. You know, I'm sure even I called the last chapter Elderhood, which I was actually really pleased with because I was like, how can I keep it in the hood thing? And then I was like, Elderhood, great. Is it a word? Yes. But, you know, there'll be things that I'm discovering about how horrifically misogynistic I was about older women when I was young. And, you know, we're all just trying to live life for the first time. And I think so often we think that when we're adults, we'll have it figured out. I remember definitely feeling like I can't wait till I'm in my 20s and boys aren't players anymore. Or like, you know, you just think things are easier for adults and we're all doing things for the first time. And I think that was for me like the best thing about my book. And also to realise, to meet people where they are and like not think just because you've like recently learned something that makes you better than someone else because they don't know that thing. Like every one of us is just trying to figure it out and be happy.
It's true. As Simone de Beauvoir said, representation of the world, like the world itself, is the work of men. They describe it from their own point of view, which they confuse with absolute truth. And I think something that really comes out of Bimbo, ditch the labels, find your voice, reclaim your confidence, is there isn't some absolute truth sitting there about you or about womanhood, about femininity, about humanity, about relationships. It's everything to play for. We can rewrite our own stories as women, as feminists, and as individuals and human beings and friendship groups, and within our romantic relationships, we can write our own story. And I'm so glad, Ashley, that you wrote your own story in Bimbo. It really spoke to me, and I know that it will speak to lots of women. And I would recommend that you buy it for lots of young women and girls, especially right now, what they're facing on the internet. So many horror stories from 15, 16-year-old girls saying the boys at school are just unspeakable. And that's not all boys. There are some lovely boys who are absolutely fighting the good fight. But there's a lot now that have been seduced by this story. This would make a great birthday present or a great Christmas present. And you have one opportunity to get Ashley to sign it to somebody. So if you've got any presents coming up, it might be a good idea to buy a couple tonight. I'm also signing my book, 6 Conversations We're Scared to Have, which is about why the left and the right are so fragmented and why the left has split so much and how we can try and build it back together. And Ashley, have you got anything else to plug? Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about?
God, no, but you just plugged hard. I'm like very impressed with that plugging. I need to up my plugging game.
Yeah.
All I was going to say was that, you know, you mentioned trans, non-binary, and I really, obviously a lot of these stories are my own stories, but I really want to say and have put in the book that trans women are part of our fight. And also there's a chapter in the book about raising a son, and my son is experiencing like bullying at the moment for liking girly things. And so I want this to be educational for people, for everybody. And also like basically we're not equal until all of us are equal, and trans people are very much in that conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I loved reading that in the book because it's a particularly brutal time for trans people because it's a manufactured culture war that's come out of the Heritage Foundation and it's come out of Christian nationalism looking for a way to divide feminists. It's not really, they don't really care about trans people. There's very few trans people, but they care about dividing feminists. They care about dividing the LGBTQ community, and they've done that. So it's really important that we do look out for trans people in our lives, in our communities. Thank you so much for coming out tonight and being part of the Guilty Feminist and being part of the Guilty Feminist Waterstone's book club. Could I have a huge round of applause for Ashley James? Anything else we should watch you on, read, anything else? Just buy a bunch of books and have her sign them tonight. And thank you so much. Big round of applause to Waterstones. And all
you.
of the... Oh, stop. Thank you. I've been Deborah Frances-White. We've been The Guilty Feminist. Thank you so much and good night.
Thank you.
You have been listening to The Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guest, Ashley James. The recording engineer was Grundy Lizimbra. The Guilty Feminist theme tune was composed by Mark Hodge. The producer was Tom Salinsky for The Spontaneity Shop. Thanks to Gina DCO, Zainab Mohammed, Ned Sedgwick, and everyone at Waterstones, as well as all of you for listening. For more information about this and other episodes, visit guiltyfeminist.com.